And that's what it's saying. So they add into there, though, by the way, that's a perfect segue, David.
I know.
That indeed. He was reading ahead. There you go. Every episode, I have to give you one little pat on the head, and that's how we keep things going.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax. HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle of Cardin Compliance. How's it going, Donna?
I'm hanging in there, David.
Good grief. I'm
tense, man. I can't let people go on vacation. You know?
Yeah.
You think you're going to have a quiet week because it's a holiday. No.
Yeah. No. That makes it fun for you.
Mm-hmm. We'll call it that.
Yeah. So today we're going to dive into some things. First of all, OCR released a newsletter, and we'll go into that. And we're calling that the mic drop for cloud providers. Because there's a lot of, how should we say this, misunderstandings from cloud providers on what their role is when it comes to HIPAA. So we want to try to clear some of that up.
Yeah, that's the ticket.
Yeah. And then we're going to cover some, we've been asking for weeks now for listeners to complete a survey, a little short survey we have on the website. And we've had a lot of listeners doing that. And we've tried to put some of those responses into past episodes. So we have a few more that's come in and some good questions from those surveys that we want to kind of cover in the show too. So we'll do that in the second half. But before we do that, where in the world can we find Donna?
I don't know. She's lost. Lost. That's for sure.
So we do like to, for those who are new listening or hadn't listened before, we do like to cover in the beginning the episode. We like to cover where we're going to be at during the year. So if you happen to be in those areas or going to those particular conferences, then maybe we can meet you guys. We'd love to meet our listeners. It's always fun.
Or if you're just thinking about going to the conference, we could tip you over the edge. That's our hope.
Yeah. And you're good at tipping people over.
Scare the crap out of you. It's my quarterly scare the crap out of you visit. So July 19th, which this may be released right after that or yeah. But that's when I'm going to be with the Atlanta Association of Legal Administrators, which I will then be reporting back how well that goes. The topic is cybersecurity. It's not just for IT. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
How about that? And then Augusto, we are boot camping it.
Yeah.
Camp. Yep. Yeah, it's the live of HIPAA. So that is August 24th, 25th, and you can get information on that at thehipaabootcamp.com or anywhere on the Help Me with HIPAA site. It should be popping up all over the place because David likes pop-up things. And and then just set up a couple of new ones. September 22nd, I'm going to be doing the Georgia HFMA Care Forum. It's a compliance forum for HFMA at St. Joseph's Hospital Auditorium in the Sandy Springs area on Pill Hill, as we used to call it.
Pill Hill.
Yeah, there's a lot of hospitals and medical there. It's Pill Hill. So then that's what did I say? September. Then October, yep. North Metro, MGMA, and Kennesaw, Georgia, doing the cyber hygiene, infection control for your technology, which is also what I'm doing at the HFMA conference and compliance conference. And then in November, I'm hitting two back to back. So on the 8th, I'm going to be at the Georgia HFMA State Conference. And then in Reynolds Plantation. And then on the 10th, I'm going to be at the Georgia Association of Orthopedic Executives State Conference. And then you have your September gig.
Yep, I do. It'll be September, 16 and 17. I'll be in Washington, D.C. to relieve Trump and make some executive decisions about our country.
Well, some people would say anything would be better, but I'd like to report, no, this is not.
So, no, I will be in D.C. at the Unconvention, which is an IT business owners conference. And I'll be speaking on compliance as well as doing some video marketing type stuff in your business because I like using video.
That's right. He's a vid, and let's don't go down that rabbit hole. So that takes us to our fun little newsletter, the mic drop.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, you know, everybody likes to say, "Well, HIPAA's confusing, and I don't know what they mean," and blah blah blah. And of course, that's why we like to look at the resolutions. We like to look at the newsletters. I mean, there is a lot of information that comes out that clears up a lot of misconceptions and explains a lot and adds to our understanding of what the rule means. The problem is most people don't know how to find it or don't dig into it or they don't want to listen to it because it's usually not what they want to hear.
Well, yeah, or they'll take it and then say, well, that doesn't apply to me because of this gray area here. Or, what's the definition of the word "the"?
Right, yeah. So it's always good when we have something that comes out from OCR directly and it's not just some argument over LinkedIn where we have something that we can really hang our hat on and say, look, this is what it says, and this is what we need to be doing. So, and we have that in this month's newsletter. Well, actually, I guess it would technically be last month's, in June 2017's newsletter, where it talks about what to consider when you're dealing with file sharing and cloud computing.
And just a little note, OCR does distribute a cybersecurity newsletter every month, and they have a privacy and security listserv, and we'll put links to let you sign up for those so you can see them on your own on the podcast page.
Cool. Do that.
Yeah. Because David ain't doing it, I'll do it for you.
One of us will get it done.
Yeah. Somebody.
So file sharing and is a big thing. And some people don't even know they're using file sharing stuff.
I know, really.
One of the other things it talks about is collaboration tools. And I think probably a couple of the biggest ones usually is when we're discussing like G Suite or Office 365, where there's some file sharing going on. Of course, there's like Dropbox that does file sharing. Collaboration tools, obviously, all those could be that as well. Some of those, there's tons of platforms out there that do this. And the problem a lot of times we run into is that there's sometimes it's an argument from the vendor, whether it's the endpoint vendor or some vendor in between, as to whether or not they're a business associate. And so we want to kind of clear that up. So
yeah, well, what really brought this to my attention when I was reading it, I'm like, we should really cover that because I had some things happen where there are a lot of small data center providers out there, as you know, David. Mm-hmm. And people will contract with them to host their servers and all these other things. And we always hear how data centers don't have to meet HIPAA requirements. They don't have to have the BAAs and all these. Well, here's why. Because, some of the big ones, there's not a lot to worry about. You sign what you sign when you're looking at Amazon Web Services or, the giant names. They're either going to take healthcare or they're not. And if they will, this is the way they're going to do it. But when you look at some of those smaller vendors, unless they make it a featured element, that healthcare is their niche market, then often they'll tell you, yeah, we got it. We don't have to do that. And we know all about HIPAA. And then you have a small, and this is really a thing that happened, you have a small data center that got hit with ransomware that somehow, and every data center provider will tell you this can't happen, but I'm just saying. And it's a very complicated scenario. I'm not even going to go into how complicated this one is, but it was a small provider, a private company, and they got hit with ransomware, and it hit several different servers of a particular EMR vendor in a particular area, maybe between me and David. But they got hit, and it was all these businesses in this certain area had, they had kind of deal with this data center, and they told them they knew all about the stuff. And then when they got hit with the ransomware and it locked everything down, it was a nightmare. And in a lot of ways, they're still dealing with that nightmare they are still dealing with that nightmare, let me just say. And at one time, the data people told more than one of their clients, you don't have to worry about ransomware. It's not a breach.
Oh, gosh. But they know about HIPAA.
Yeah, but we know all about HIPAA.
Yeah.
So, and I know that there's IT people that I'd say at the beginning of this year, I was still encountering IT people that didn't understand that it's a breach, and I still will. But the ones that actually pay attention to healthcare, that guidance came out, in June or July 2016. So it took about 5 or 6 months for it to filter throughout everywhere, unless you're like us and you're sitting there watching for them to say something.
Mm-hmm.
We're open. And so that's okay. But this is why those cloud providers, and that a data center is a cloud service provider, needs to be willing to sign a BAA, but you also need them to actually know what it means.
Right.
So because of that, and then it just simultaneously, I get this newsletter from OCR. So it's clearly, if they're sending it out, it's not just that one case where problems are still happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big issue, I think. And we talked about this before where, these people come out there and they have some type of other certification. They throw the certification around. Yes, we have some type of SOC certification or ISO certification or whatever. So we're good, because HIPAA can't possibly be any more stringent than this.
Yeah.
But they miss the point that it's not, security is not, about being, HIPAA certifications, which is not any, and we'll cover that in a second, but HIPAA doesn't deal with just the security part of it. There's other things that go along with it. And of course, understanding HIPAA is kind of part of the thing that should be going on. But back to the other comment I made, in this newsletter, they specifically said at the very end of it, that they do not endorse or otherwise recognize private organizations' quote unquote certifications regarding HIPAA compliance.
That's right. So that's why I called it they did a whole discussion about why they're saying this, and another Poneman report in conjunction with Metalogix. They're referencing it because it says a recent survey regarding file sharing collaboration tools used by organizations from a variety of industries, including healthcare, so it's not just healthcare, found that just over half of the organizations stated they had at least one confirmed file sharing data breach in the last 2 years. So, and interestingly, the top security concerns were temporary workers, contractors, or third parties accessing data they should not see.
Mm-hmm.
Or then you've got employees accidentally exposing data, which we talked about, and then completely broken security management processes of, I didn't know. And it's very, there's only external hackers. That's not the problem with these services.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things that they have in place. It's people. And what do we say about that, David? It's the people.
It's the people.
Yeah. So when they get down and they do that whole discussion and they point out these security concerns are not unique to any particular file sharing or cloud computing technology. So don't say, I only have to worry about that if I'm doing X.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big believer in the cloud if it's done properly.
Right.
And have been, doing that for years and years and years. I wasn't afraid to step on the ledge.
I wasn't afraid. One thing that gets brought up to me a lot, though, is like, okay, I'm doing business with Google. How am I going to possibly make sure Google's doing what Google's supposed to do?
Well, yeah, the big ones, there's only so much you can do. They're going to give you a BAA, and you can get one. And you should get one, because if you don't have one, you're in violation.
Mm-hmm.
And you get the BAA from Google, and after that, you just download their white papers and show you did your due diligence, because they've got tons of information about how they manage security, how they manage all these things. So those giant ones, you're not going to have a choice. You're not even a small fish. You're a minnow, and maybe even a tadpole. And so it's not going to matter what you say or do. You're going to have to follow what they do. Mm-hmm. Amazon and Alphabet. What are you going to do? So that is really and truly the least of your worries. Mm-hmm. And just like they said here, it's your end that is generally where something goes wrong, not on their end.
Right.
So on the big ones, no. But the smaller ones, like this, small data center and the small providers. And when we say small, I don't know, David, what would you consider this? There's Amazon, there's all those large ones, but how would you define what would be a small one? I'm not really sure.
Yeah,
to me, it's like, how many people you got?
Yeah. I mean, there's some of them that have, one single data center. Some of them have a couple of different data centers. I don't know. I'd almost probably say anything other than Amazon and Google and all those would be small providers.
Yeah. But one of the things that you want to look at is how long have they been in healthcare, and do they actually have documentation about how they handle HIPAA?
Yeah. Because there's so many people out there that, we're HIPAA certified, we're HIPAA made easy, we're HIPAA this, HIPAA that. I mean, it gets thrown around so much. But quite honestly, if you really just ask a few questions, it's pretty evident pretty quickly if they know what they're talking about or not. So it's not too difficult to kind of get in there and find out, are they really doing what they say they're doing?
That's what I always tell people about our BA due diligence questionnaire. Why do we want to send that? I mean, what if they lie? I said, let me tell you something. They answered that. You're going to know if they're lying or not. Mm-hmm. Because, it's not complicated stuff, and it's a lot of yes, no, maybe, 1986.
Yeah, well, I sent one to a cloud provider recently, and it's been, I guess, going on 3 or 4 weeks now. I haven't got it back.
Right, and it's a small one.
Yeah,
I don't expect them back from Google.
Right, and I did get, I actually did get a response back from the guy I sent it to, which was just a sales guy, and he said, yes, I did pass it up the chain, and no, I haven't forgot about it. Actually, what you sent has sparked a lot of discussion. I'm like, well, great. That's
maybe, but that does concern me about your capabilities.
Yeah, great. I'm glad it did. And quite honestly, at this point, I'm not doing business with them. I'm not going to until, I have some assurances. But, if nothing else, at least it gets the ball rolling, because I won't mention names, but there are some fairly sizable businesses that we've sent that to in the past, and it actually caused them to rethink and change the way they looked at what they were doing. So that little due diligence form has actually changed some very, very large businesses and how they're doing things. So I'm pretty proud about that, even though I have nothing to stand on to say it actually happened. It's not like they said, because of your due diligence form, we did this. Although they weren't doing it before I sent it. And all of a sudden they decided, well, maybe we need to do things differently.
Yeah, we've had that happen too. A significant number, I would say, of times that first it was, they would ask a few questions about the questions. And as we dove deeper into it, it has made them change. We also had a CEO of a software company that actually called his team together and said, this is a perfect exercise for us. Let's go through these questions together and make sure we as a team know these answers, and called and, was very thankful for it and thought it was a great exercise for them. So there's a lot of positive things companies could treat these things like when we do these questionnaires, instead of, it's always a red flag to me if they are yelling and screaming and
gnashing their teeth.
I had one guy that sent this whole thing that said, what method of, there's a lot of methods for doing a risk analysis. Which one did you use? Just the method.
Right.
And he wrote in all caps, if I told you that, I wouldn't be secure. He was just freaking out. And I'm like, most people just say they use the NIST guide.
Yeah.
So
what do you, just not how you do it, but what method are you using?
I don't want to know the results. I'm not asking for any of those. But this guy, you could see like veins must have been popping out in his head.
What is your admin passwords?
I know, really. Sorry. It's not like that. But you're right. It does. It does. If it's handled properly, it's either going to reiterate that you're doing the right thing, which it did with that CEO. He said, we made a couple of small changes just because we wanted to better answer it. Or it's going to get your attention and say, wait, we maybe don't understand it. And then you got the third one where everybody else falls. And that's why they had to do the mic drop.
Right.
So, yeah.
But it does point out in the newsletter that, guidance did come out in October 2016 on this stuff, and it gives some bullet points. And I think covering these bullet points is something we should do. First one being a cloud service provider, which they market out as a CSP. So a cloud service provider is a business associate when a covered entity or business associate engages the services of the cloud service provider to create, receive, maintain, or transmit ePHI, such as to process and restore ePHI on its behalf. So, there's your 4 things to look at.
And within the parentheses there, such as to process and or store ePHI.
Yeah, so if they just store it, so if you're using Dropbox, they're storing it if you put an ePHI on it. If you're using Google Drive, or if you're using OneDrive, I can go on and on and on. The point is, if it's stored there, then they become a business associate. Now, here's the thing I run into too, Donna, and tell me if you do. They don't engage the vendor and say, we're going to be storing this information there. They just throw it there. and then wonder why they can't do that. Well,
Well, that's your responsibility as a business associate or a covered entity. It's your responsibility to make sure that the vendors you're using are HIPAA compliant. And actually, or at least, I hate saying HIPAA compliant because, you can't be, but the requirement of a business associate agreement and a follow-up due diligence, you have to have that if you're going to store or process data there, period. And then when you do it and then you learn, wait a minute, now at the last minute, I'm going to start asking. No, all of these purchasing and the subscription agreements in your organization need to start with, will they be a business associate? And we do that in the boot camp section on managing business associates. We give you a flow chart of what your process should be and how you should go about it, because period, you are, right. That says you are a business associate and it ends with a period. It's done.
And one thing I run into is that sometimes the covered entities is looking at this and they're going, okay, well, I don't really have any cloud service providers. All my stuff is in our EMR application, so I'm good to go. And then, if you start asking more questions, you're like, okay, well, do you have any kind of backups? And, oh yeah, we have backups. And we're not backing up our EHR because all of it's cloud-based or whatever, but we are backing up our Word documents and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, so is there any PHI in there? And they'll usually say no. And then after we dig, they're like, oh, wow, yeah, actually, there's a lot of PHI in there.
Yeah, it's hard. If you never open a Word document or a spreadsheet ever on your computer, maybe. Maybe we can say that.
And then you say, okay, so you have that information backed up. Where is it backing up to? Oh, well, this little small IT company down the road here has a little server in-house and they're just backing up to there. Okay, well, now they're a business associate.
Well, yeah, the IT company was a business associate anyway, but now they're a cloud service provider business associate.
Yeah. So, but the next point, God, I can't tell you how many arguments I got into early on this one point about cloud service providers, but it states, the cloud service provider lacking an encryption key to the ePHI does not exempt the cloud service provider from business associate status and its obligations under the HIPAA rules.
Period.
How many times have you heard, I can't access the data. I can't access the server. It's locked in a cage. I don't know the password. It's encrypted. It doesn't matter.
You're managing all the traffic. Number one, you have access, and a lot of people will tell you, I can break an encryption code if I really want to. Most people will say a good hacker can break an encryption code given the opportunity.
Yeah, and enough time.
Yeah, and the time. So, you're controlling the traffic. You got people maybe bored. You don't know. You just don't know. And to say that you don't have to do it is, yes. I've had people yelling at me. Just like yelling at me, and I'm remaining calm. I'm not quite sure why they're yelling. I had IT providers. I've had software providers. I've had all kinds of people literally screaming on the phone how wrong I am. And I'm like, It's your business decision to do what you're doing. I'm just saying I'm going to advise my clients not to use your services because you don't meet those obligations. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's all I'm saying. So if my clients ask for my advice, which is kind of my job, I'm going to say, don't use you until you meet these obligations.
Right.
And here's why. So there you go. Anytime somebody tries to tell you this, you send them that and it's clearly stated. They can't, that's the mic drop. Boom. It doesn't matter. It does not exempt you from business associate status and obligations. Don't just sign the associate agreement.
We're done.
You're obligated.
Yeah.
So
now here's another one. A HIPAA compliant business associate agreement is required between the covered entity or business associate and cloud service provider.
Yes.
I know of times, I won't say who, when, where, how, why, where a business associate agreement is given to a vendor, whether it be IT or otherwise, and it's like, yeah, we'll get back to you on that. And, months go by, they're still providing services to the covered entity, but there's still not a business associate agreement in place.
Right. And we just had a settlement about that and a whole discussion about it.
So if you're one of those people and you don't have that business associate agreement in place, what does that mean, Donna?
It means that, number one, you're in violation for 2 violations per day for every day they have data as the one that's upstream and giving them data. Mm-hmm. So you're violating the fact it's an unauthorized disclosure and doing business with a business associate without a business associate agreement. So every day, 2 violations that happens. Then the business associate thinking we don't have to sign that, so that doesn't make us have to follow HIPAA. Mm-hmm. They're in even worse because essentially they're just neglecting their obligation to comply. Mm-hmm. And they're saying we don't have to do it. Well, if we don't sign this, we won't have to do it. Well, under the new guidance, under high tech, it clearly stated in the final rule, it's the service you provide that makes you a business associate, not the agreement.
Right.
So you still are one. Even if you try to say, if I don't sign that, I won't be. You still are.
Yeah. And I see that a lot in IT discussions. Well, I want to do business with this little doctor's office here, but I don't want to sign this agreement and put me on the hook. Well, dude, you're on the hook if you're doing business with them.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. The agreement doesn't have anything. The agreement makes it legal. It's illegal, technically, if you don't have the agreement and you do the work.
Right.
So,
Glad we got that out.
Yeah.
So, the next one.
Our favorite one.
Our favorite one? Yeah, you're right. OCR does not endorse, certify, or recommend specific technology or products.
No, it does not. So HIPAA certified and certified HIPAA compliant and all of those kind of things. And I have to say I'm starting to see less of those. I don't know about you, but I feel like I'm seeing less. I can't statistically prove it, but I feel like I'm seeing less. I think it is. I think that we've spread the word and people have stopped.
Yeah.
That and, OCR saying it clearly.
Yeah, well, they get that from us too, so, I mean.
You say they listen to us. So, But it's one of those things that, I even teach it in my classes to say, I will ask the group, it's like the very beginning of a presentation, and I'll say, are we HIPAA compliant? And it'll be somebody I've worked with for years. Are we HIPAA compliant? And everybody will say, yes. And I'll be like, no. You never want to say that. Here's the things you do want to say, because yes, there's like HIPAA compliant business associate agreement means the business associate agreement meets the obligations of HIPAA. But you as an organization being HIPAA compliant, OCR has even said, we won't tell you that. Mm-hmm. Even on the day that we're there, we'll say, right now you're good. See ya. Tomorrow, maybe not so much.
Yeah, it's definitely a day-to-day thing.
Yeah.
And another point to bring up, too, in this is that you can't have a service or a product be HIPAA compliant. The compliance aspect is based on the business and the business practices and the policies and procedures and all that. So if you're going to somebody and you're going, hey, I need XYZ service, is that service HIPAA compliant? That's not really the right question. And you might get a wrong answer if you're asking it that way, because it's not based on the service itself. It's based on the business around the service.
Yeah, it's the the whole concept of asking, again, why we do the due diligence. I want to know, do you have a culture of cybersecurity and culture of compliance? And those questions let me know that.
Yeah.
I want to know, if you take HIPAA compliance seriously, that pretty much puts you on that path. And if you're taking it seriously and you continue to take it seriously, so that's another reason you have to check every year with these vendors, not like do it once and you're done. Because what if the person that was in charge leaves? The one that created the culture, the one on the leadership, the C-level person that was really driving it, if they go, the compliance officer goes and they're not replaced, or they're replaced with somebody that understands coding compliance and not HIPAA compliance. Happens all the time. So that's why you got to ask again and again. But yes, it's about the organization and their commitment to it. It's not about a checklist.
Yeah. And where I see this as a problem in the IT community a lot is an IT provider will say, I'm selling a HIPAA compliant backup service, or I'm selling a HIPAA compliant remote access service. So I'm good. That makes me HIPAA compliant because I'm selling HIPAA compliant services. Nay, nay, as Donna would say. It doesn't work that way. Your compliance doesn't, it doesn't go uphill and downstream and all that. Your compliance is your compliance. You don't outsource that because you're using quote unquote HIPAA compliant vendors that are providing those services. That doesn't make you compliant. So you can't do that.
No. And that's what it's saying. So they add into there, though, by the way, that's a perfect segue, David.
I know.
That indeed. He was reading ahead. There you go. Every episode, I have to give you one little pat on the head, and that's how we keep things going. A little scratch behind the ears. That's all he needs. All right. So in addition to a BAA, a service level agreement is commonly used to address more specific expectations between the CSP and its customers, meaning the covered entities and business associates. And then it proceeds to say, and I love this, consistent with the BAA may address HIPAA concerns. So they're trying to lead you down this path. Because they can't say that legally you're required to have these things. It's not part of the law. Right. But what they're saying is, if you are going to protect yourself, these are the kind of things you're supposed to be worried about anyway.
Which are?
System availability and reliability, ability of the abilities.
Yeah. Well, that goes into the CIA.
Yeah. There you go. Backup and data recovery. Right. We talk about that because if they don't have a good backup and business continuity plan, what's going to happen to you? Oh, well, we'll be up. It's no problem. We can just restore. How long? You need to know how long.
Right.
Is it going to be 2 weeks? Or
in some cases it can be. I have a story quickly where somebody had data and it was being backed up. What they didn't realize is that in order to recover that backup, it was going to take 4 weeks to download the data set.
And there was no way to move the data quickly?
No, because the backup vendor they'd chosen did not have any other kind of like drive they would ship out or anything. It was just a broadband download, and it was going to take 4 complete 24/7 weeks to download the entire data set.
Yeah, and you got to maintain the connection the whole time. Right?
Exactly. If it breaks,
awesome.
you start over.
And you're in, East Bumble, and your bandwidth is the size of a straw.
Yeah, I know. So those things, people just sometimes just don't know the questions to ask. And,
that's right.
That's why
it's the back end.
Yeah.
It's not the front end, because everybody sells the front end. It's the back end you got to ask. It's Oz. You want to know who's back there.
Yeah. Well, I like to tell people, you're not paying for backup. You're paying for the ability to recover.
That's right. That's right.
But people want to, we're testing your backups. Well, are you testing the recovery of the backup?
Yeah. 2 different things.
Yes.
So then it goes into manner in which data will be returned to the customer after service termination.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We can't hold it hostage?
Yeah, that's it. You got to have some sort of definition of what's going to happen up in here. And then here's an important one, security responsibility. Who's going to be responsible? And use, retention, and disclosure limitations. Right. So again, the BAA implies these things are going to happen. And that's really, when you say you're going to follow HIPAA, you're implying that you're going to do these things.
Right.
And the due diligence and the SLA, the service level agreement, those two are what is supposed to help ensure that they're actually going to do it, not just imply it.
Yeah, because all these things you just talked about, they fall back to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the PHI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's amazing.
And then they do reiterate yet again. So this tells you something that's very, very important, people.
Yeah.
Whether you're a marketing person, a salesperson, a technical person, a vendor, covered entity, it doesn't matter. They're reiterating this for the second time. They did it once in bullet form and then another one in paragraph form.
Mm-hmm. And they even start the sentence with, it is important to note
that OCR also does not endorse. So they're saying also, like again, also does not endorse or otherwise recognize private organizations, quote, certifications regarding HIPAA compliance, and covered entities and business associates should ensure their own compliance with the HIPAA rules.
Mm-hmm.
Just like you said, David.
Just like I said.
You can't just buy it.
No.
You know, it takes the work.
Well, the other thing I think that kind of says, to me at least, is that if you've bought into one of these services that's HIPAA made easy or, get your compliance done quickly or whatever the case might be, it's still, according to this, it's your responsibility to ensure your own compliance. So if this company is not doing what they're supposed to be doing, that's your responsibility to ensure your own compliance.
Well, and I had a conversation with another HIPAA consultant who told me that they had gone into an organization that told them, oh, yeah, we're HIPAA compliant. We don't have to worry about it. And so, you get an opportunity and you ask a couple questions. And they thought they were HIPAA compliant because they had bought the policies and procedures from their organization. So there you go. There's the confusion. There's the root issue. And it's misconceptions that really make it happen.
Right.
So I don't know how much time we have left to cover our survey responses, but we can hit a couple of quick things if you want, David. We can handle the 2 questions, or we can touch on the feedback that we've gotten.
Yeah, let's go ahead. I mean, we can go through a little faster than we were going to, because I think they need to be covered, especially the one about the length of the show, because I think the advisement that you gave them is really good, and people need to understand how to use that. Okie dokie. So, our feedback that we got from our survey responses, one of the questions that came in, and we do thank everybody for sending in survey responses because we do read every single one of them. But the question is, what are the characteristics of a good HIPAA privacy officer?
Yeah. So my answer was both a security and privacy officer needs to be willing to spend time getting to know what HIPAA actually says. Part of that is being involved in the development of the implementation of policies and procedures. There's a lot of minutia involved in HIPAA, but the security rule has even more the privacy rule has more than the security rule. Where the security rule is the debate over encryption, the privacy rule gets to, you've got to make decisions of like, okay, well, it's a pediatric office and the parents are divorced and they both remarried and it's the stepmother is authorized to pay the bill, but now she wants to control the care. And I mean, you're getting into a lot of really detailed things when you're a privacy officer. So a good privacy officer has got to be passionate about protecting that PHI, and they got to understand how it, because they've got to look at what does it matter to the patient, what does it matter to the business, how does it affect the staff, because that's going to drive them to find ways to educate everybody, get everybody involved, because the primary control of the privacy rule is the privacy officer. So to have everybody involved is a key part of that, or at least to have them know when to ask. So they have to have that passion that they get everybody get on the bus. And they have to be a little bit of a policy wonk, not as much as me. I don't expect anybody to get that excited when something new to read comes out. But they got to be willing to dive into the business questions, like what I talked about. There's a situation, a question, an incident occurs. You've got to spend time and not panic, but go through all of those things. And it's meticulous in documenting when, what, where. So you got to do documentation, and you need to be confident enough to stand up to the power structure. That's a very important thing. That, there are cases now where the compliance officer has been criminally, it's scary that the compliance officer knew things were going on in a fraud case, and that compliance officer was charged with the crime and penalties, and the individual, they turned the other way, and, they didn't have any documentation they ever stood up to him. So they were complicit, and it was their job to stop it. So the hammer came down.
Hammer time.
Yeah.
So next one, and I'll read it as it came in. As a BAA, how can we best showcase our compliance program to clients and auditors?
So I'll let you go with that one there.
Okay. So first of all, I think you probably used the wrong acronym, which is common. But a BAA, which is a business associate agreement, is a legal contractual agreement between two entities where at least one of them is a BA, which is a business associate. So I think you're probably asking, as a business associate, how can we best showcase our compliance? And one of the things I would recommend is taking, we talked about the business associate due diligence questionnaire. We talked about that as far as if you're a covered entity, sending that out to business associates, or if you're a business associate, sending it out to your vendors who are also business associates. But it's a great idea to also have that questionnaire and fill it out yourself, and then have that available, whether you post it on your website or if you go to a sales call or something like that. Go ahead and have that documentation so that you can sit there and, don't pull out the certificate saying, I completed the 30-minute training on HIPAA and here's my certificate. I mean, have your due diligence questionnaire and show them that. To me, that's extremely impressive, because you're not just saying we do it, but you're saying, here, I'm already showing you the due diligence you're going to be doing on me or should be doing on me. I'm showing you what that already looks like. Explain to them that, you make sure that you have all the compliance covered from the beginning and that you have a culture of compliance. You do all that stuff up front, especially when it's a business associate agreement. Do that piece up front. If you're bringing in a new client, don't start doing the contractual SLAs and how much you're going to pay and the services you're going to get, and then find out that you're not even going to be able to get a business associate agreement signed, or you can't come to terms on one that both of you agree on. So do that early in the process. Don't do it on the back end. And then, when you bring in a prospect or an auditor to your site and they see the things that you're doing, and they see the business associate due diligence stuff, or maybe you have posters that are up in your business, because we've talked about that before. You have posters, maybe you have screensavers up, but you're doing things that somebody could easily look at and go, yes, they actually have a culture of compliance going on. It's not just something that they're throwing out there in marketing materials. I think those are the things that you want to be doing, so that if an auditor or a client comes in or you're talking to one, that's how you can showcase that.
Indeed.
Okay, now for feedback. I'll let you cover these.
Well, we've had some fun comments, and you can tell there's some people that, I don't know, they know us better than others, or there's keep up the excellent work, and Donna and Carla are the best. I'm trying to figure out which one of my family members may have done that. Or maybe Carla did it. Then there was, if there were pictures of Donna wearing her chicken hat, I would feel better. So I'm going to try to find a picture of me wearing a chicken hat. Yeah, that's the presentation I did a couple of years ago. Pecked by a chicken. Can a chicken cause a data breach? And yes, I try creative ways to get your attention. I wore a chicken hat. So we'll see if we can find a picture. But there were some specific points in the suggestions. They were interesting and appreciated. And we've even made there's been a few changes that we've made, to how we're doing the podcast and the show notes and those kind of things. So we welcome your input greatly. Mm-hmm. But there were a few suggestions that basically wanted some more technical details and deeper dives into security topics. And honestly, that's a tough one for us, because we also get feedback that says it's too technical, and then you get the one saying, well, we need it to be, not technical because we appreciate that. And then others say we need it to be more technical. So we're trying to find that middle ground right down the middle of the road. So 2 out of 3 don't want the technical details, and we're just learning. We got a really diverse listener base.
Yeah.
So we're trying not to do that. But For those of you who want to get into more technical discussions, we do have mechanisms for that. In fact, David and I just recorded yesterday under the HIPAA4MSPs.com office hours call. We recorded a whole discussion about patch management and the importance of it. And what does HIPAA say about patch management specifically, and the tools and the timing and those kind of things. So on the podcast, we're going to try to keep from going too deep into the nerdosphere, which I really like that one, nerdosphere. But we're going to keep trying to find that balance because we do like having a diverse listener base because we think that helps everybody.
Right.
So, and then we had one suggestion asking us to make our episodes about 20 minutes long. I understand that point, and the listeners just trying to consume multiple podcasts per day, and we totally get that.
Yeah. And
we have made some changes trying to move things along faster, but clearly this one's not working out. We've struggled since the beginning on, how long do we make an episode? We've come up with some that are 30 minutes. We come up with some that are longer, and we know we don't want to do an hour or two every episode, but the topics are really dry.
Yeah.
And, if we do 20 minutes, we got to do facts, nothing but the facts, ma'am.
Yeah. And plus we've been moving at the speed of light, and we've had a lot of people that they really enjoy a lot of the banter that we have, especially in the beginning. We talk, we try to break the ice and kind of get into the episode. People kind of get to know us that way too. And I think that's very important, that we're not just talking heads, that, we really want people to understand who we are, know who we are, and you feel comfortable that you're part of the conversation. So it does take a little time to do that. And when we have tried to do 20, 30-minute recordings, we are very, very rushed to get the information in, and it just doesn't feel good from our end putting it out there, and it doesn't feel good from the listener end because they almost feel like they're not getting the exposure to the information that they really want. But we have a solution.
Yeah, there is an alternative, and we have some listeners that do this, that the player they use has a speed up option. So I guess they listen to us like the chipmunks.
I do this on all my podcasts, and honestly, it works really well because even though it speeds up the speaking, it doesn't change the pitch. So it doesn't make you sound like a chipmunk. It just makes your speech faster. So I will typically listen to my podcast at anywhere between 1.2 to 1.5 speed. Kind of depends on how fast the person naturally talks, and that way I can get through a 45-minute podcast in, 17 minutes.
Yeah,
so,
and we're both Southerners, so we're supposed to talk slow.
But that's a great suggestion, and like I said, I do it on every podcast I listen to. So if we have a typical 30-minute podcast, you can get through it a lot faster. 15 minutes if it's 45 minutes or whatever the case might be. But that's definitely a little neat hack to use to get through the podcast quicker.
Yeah, so we're going to keep, we love the feedback, and we're really trying to respond appropriately to the constructive criticisms, and certainly love the accolades, especially David. We've already talked about that today. So please, if you haven't hit the listener survey, please do so. It's at helpmewithhipaa.com/survey, or you can go to any of the podcast episodes. And at the bottom of the show notes, you can click listener survey. So please keep giving us that feedback. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
And then I'm going to add an update to our MDM episode. We did get an email from George, who would like to recommend if a business is a Microsoft Office 365 small business or enterprise customer, there is a Microsoft Intune tool that does MDM, and the price is $6 per user per month, unlimited devices, and you manage iOS, Android, OS X, and Windows devices. So you manage everything. So AirWatch, his point was, although AirWatch Express is $250 per device per month, it can add up. So a per user pricing would be advantageous if you have different devices. So like me, I could manage my Windows laptop, my MacBook, my watch, my phone, my iPad.
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah, you got all of those things. So, and I don't even want to know what you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for writing in, George. And I'm going to add that to the show notes. It was a very good point, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. So as we close out our show for today, as we always do, we'd like to thank you for listening. Also, make sure you head over to iTunes or Stitcher and review us. But I do want to make sure we say something about the HIPAA Boot Camp because it is coming up in August. If you're wanting to get in on the HIPAA Boot Camp and you want to take advantage of our early bird pricing, you need to do that now because early bird pricing ends August the 1st, 2017. So if you go to thehipaabootcamp.com, you can get more information and you can register right there on that site. If you have any questions about that, feel free to email us at contact@helpmewithhipaa.com. You can visit us on our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. And just remember that for Donna and myself, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.